test on Saturday, we have all of our views come. It seems that people start preparing for their IELTS about 3 days before their IELTS, maybe 2 days or even the night before. So that's sort of what happens. So we decided to run these masterclasses in the week leading up to those big test dates. So I hope this is helpful for you, by the way. It's good practice. Cool. Okay, that's connected to YouTube, so that's good. Hello, people there on YouTube. I'm just getting started. Feel free to leave a comment in the chat, click like, and don't forget to subscribe to this. Okay, let's have a look here, see if we've got everything together. Cool, thanks for coming along. My name is Jay. I'm one of the expert IELTS teachers here at E2 Language. Welcome to the masterclasses. This is day 2, so they will run for 5 days until Friday. Leading up to the big exam, which is happening this Saturday. It's not too late to sign up to the masterclasses, by the way. We still have the rest of today. We're going to do academic writing task 1 today. We're going to do writing task 2 for both general and academic. And we're going to do reading tonight as well. This will happen tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. So 3 classes a day. Do go ahead and sign up. We've got a $10 voucher discount thing happening at the moment as well. Just check the information in the description below. Cool, but in this class, we're going to do academic writing task 1. We're going to focus on bar graphs, okay? Let's have a look. The mission, today's mission is to write a well-structured, relevant, and high-scoring task 1. But the first thing we need to do is understand the task. So this is what we're going to look at today. Let's just have a little think about this, because what you'll need to do on test day is spend a minute or even a couple of minutes or about 90 seconds preferably looking at that graph on the page, because you need to understand it fully. Because if you don't comprehend the whole thing, your writing's going to be inaccurate. So a part of that 20 minutes is actually going to be spent analyzing this graph. This is the one we're going to do tonight. You can see the heading. It says comparison of hourly earnings of Uber and, whoopsie, where's my pen? There. Comparison of hourly earnings of Uber and taxi drivers. Okay, fine. Let's look at the x-axis first. So we've got capital cities: Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra, Adelaide, and Perth. And you can see the Ubers are blue and the taxis are, let's just call this orange. Fine. And here on the y-axis, we can see the hourly rate of pay in dollars. And I can imagine these will be Australian dollars. It'll probably tell us in the graph description. So Melbourne, we can see Uber drivers get paid about $25 an hour. Taxi drivers in Melbourne get paid about whatever that is, $17.50 an hour. Sydney, Uber drivers are up here at about whatever that is, 20, let's just make that 23. So if this is 25, this is 17.5. Let's just do this. Let's just analyze this graph for a second. Taxi drivers in Sydney, let's say it's about $21. Canberra Uber drivers get paid, I don't know, what's that? That must be about 23 bucks. Whoops, this has to be higher than 25. This would be 27. So this would be about 23. This would be about 17. This would be about 24. This would be about 19, say. This would be about 22. Sorry. This is why you have to analyze it, because it's hard to see. 25. Cool. Okay. So, sorry, what's going on with my slides? All right, cool. What else can you see here? Let's just look at those blue bars. Which city earns the most money for Uber drivers? Where would you want to be driving Uber? In which city? Probably Sydney or Perth, I'd say. And what about taxi drivers? Where do they earn the most money? Well, probably looks like Perth. And if we look again at Uber drivers, in which city do you earn the least money as an Uber driver? Well, as far as I can see, it looks like Canberra. And it's the same thing with taxis as well. Okay, fine. Okay, we've had a good look at this. Now let's have a think about this, okay? The first thing you need to think about, and this is really critical, is that you need to write at least 150 words. And I don't know if you know this, but 23% of candidates lose marks because their writing is under the word length. So this is absolutely critical. Let's read the description. It says, the bar graph compares the hourly earnings of Uber and taxi drivers in Australia. Fine. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Let's think about structure because we need to know how to structure these. Okay. So I've done this IELTS test twice now. And what I realized is there's no generic structure that you can use. You need to have a couple of different structures up your sleeve on test day, depending on the number of graphs that you see. This is really how you should structure, depending if you get one graph, like the one we just looked at, or you get two graphs, or you even get more than two graphs, say 3 graphs. Depending on the number of graphs you get, you need to use that particular structure. Let me show you this one here, because you may get a mixed graph on test day. For example, you may get a bar chart plus a line graph. So how would you possibly structure this? Well, if you get a mixed graph like this, you'll want to write a summary sentence. Then you'll want to just describe the bar graph, the main features, and then compare the data within that. Then you'll describe the line graph in a separate paragraph, describe the main features and compare the data in that. But for our structure, which is just a single bar graph, we're going to do it differently, or we're just going to do it like this. We're going to write a summary sentence. We're going to describe the main features. Then we're going to compare the data, okay? And we're going to make sure we write over 150 words. Fine. So what will this look like if we get an IELTS, if we wrote what would deserve an IELTS 9 on test day? It'll look like this. This is 158 words. We have a summary, we have the main features, and then we have a paragraph, the largest paragraph, where we compare data. So let's begin. I hope you have printed out your PDF workbook, by the way. If you're on YouTube, just grab a piece of paper and you can do this. For those of you who are E2 language members, I sent you a beautiful PDF. I hope you printed it. So you can actually look at that and you can write this on that PDF like on test day, okay? So let's do the summary. First things first, you need to rewrite the description in your own words to say the same thing. Okay, so the description says the bar graph compares the hourly earnings of Uber and taxi drivers in Australia. I wrote this. This bar chart represents the hourly income earned in Australian capital cities for Uber drivers and taxi drivers. So I've said the exact same thing, but just in different words. Your turn. I'll give you 2 minutes to write your summary sentence, please. One more minute. Make sure you capture the exact same idea, but just in different words. Okay, fabulous. That's 2 minutes. One of the things you'll find in the IELTS is because you're writing with a pencil, you need to formulate your sentences before you write them. You need to think of your sentence before you start writing because it's very different to a computer. On a computer, you'll start writing and then you'll go backspace and you'll delete something or you'll move the cursor and you'll add something. You cannot do that in the IELTS because you're writing with a pencil. It makes it far more difficult. So you need to think of your sentence and think, okay, that's it. That's the sentence. And then write it down. Go to the next one. Think of your sentence, then write it down. So let's have a look at this. So I'm going to just do some thinking out loud here. And we're going to think about how we could rewrite this in other words to say the exact same thing. So the bar graph compares the hourly earnings of Uber and taxi drivers in Australia. I would say something like the given bar chart, well, compares is I would just say shows, represents how much money Uber and taxi drivers earn in Australia in 5 capital cities. Okay, that's not bad. Let me try it again. The given bar chart illustrates, represents, shows how much money per hour Uber and taxi drivers make in Australia according to 5 capital cities, or in 5 capital cities, perhaps. Okay, it's not bad. It's not bad. But that's what you have to do. You have to think your sentence, then write it. It's a real trick. Right, now we move along to the main features of this graph. So this is where we select and report the main features. That's the instruction. So what we want to do is this. We want to look at this graph here, and we want to describe the overall trend or the overall features in just a single sentence. Okay, and then we want to describe the main features. Let me show you what I've done here. I said, overall, Uber drivers earn more than taxi drivers. So if I go back, that's the main trend, or that's the main feature that I see. Blue versus orange. Uber beats taxis. Okay, overall, Uber drivers earn more than taxi drivers. Now what I'm going to do is describe the main features in 2 or 3 sentences. So I'm going to say the highest paid Uber drivers are in Sydney and Perth, while the lowest are in Canberra. Taxi drivers in Perth earn more than their taxi driving counterparts in all other cities, with Sydney coming second and Canberra taxi drivers having the lowest hourly earnings. So if I go back here, what have I done? Well, I've said a sentence basically saying, okay, Uber drivers earn more than taxi drivers. Fine. You can see that in the graph here. And then I've said, okay, Uber drivers earn the most in Sydney and Perth, and they earn the least in Canberra. Okay. And then I wrote a sentence about taxi drivers. And I said, taxi drivers earn the most in Perth and Sydney, and they earn the least in Canberra. Fine. I've just described those main features there. Your turn. I'm going to give you maybe 8 minutes is a bit too much. Let's see. I'll see how you're going at 6 minutes. Your time starts now. Just reading some comments on YouTube here. Don't put any opinions in here about that taxis are having a tough competition with Uber. It's not about that. So no opinions, purely describing the data that you see. That's it. You've got about 3 minutes left. All right, that's 7 minutes. Just let me check the chat here, see how you're going. All right, good. I don't think we need the full 8 minutes there. So about 7 minutes. That's good. Nice work. Nice work. I hope you wrote some nice sentences. I think using that word overall at the beginning of the paragraph is a very good idea. It signals to the IELTS examiner what you're doing. You're describing the trends overall, okay? Good. Now, critically, in this paragraph, you should not be getting into the y-axis. You should not be talking numbers and statistics and percentages just yet. That's in the next paragraph, which we'll do now, okay? This is where we compare data. So what we're going to do, because it says here in the instructions that you need to make comparisons. So we're going to make comparisons. And this is going to be our largest paragraph of about 5 to 6 sentences. I'm just going to quickly read it to you. Uber drivers earn more than taxi drivers in all cities, with the gap being least in Perth, where Uber drivers earn around $27 per hour compared to taxi drivers on $25. Gaps in all other cities are around $6 to $8 in favor of the Uber drivers. Hourly earnings in Melbourne and Adelaide are similar at around $25 for Uber and $18 for taxi drivers in both cities. The lowest earners overall are Canberra drivers for both Uber and taxis, where their rates are $23 and $17 respectively. What have I done? Just before I get you to do it, let's have a little think about what you're going to compare. Because again, it's about decision making on test day. And I can tell you from experience that decision-making on test day is a hell of a lot harder than decision-making when you're sitting at home, feeling relaxed, and you've just had a cup of tea. You're under pressure, you're under stress, you're probably hungry, you may even need to go to the bathroom. You should really be practicing writing these, doing practice tests when you're tired, when you're hungry, just to get that test experience, because that's what really happens on test day. It's very different to when you're preparing. All right, cool. Let's have a little think about comparisons here. Okay, so we could just do a comparison sentence that Uber drivers earn more than taxi drivers. We've done that, that's fine. Now what we can do is we can focus on Melbourne. We could do it city by city. We could compare Uber drivers to taxi drivers in Melbourne, but I don't think that'd be a good way to do it. What we want to do is compare Uber drivers across all cities. Okay, so we might start by saying Uber drivers in Sydney and Perth earn the most at about $27 per hour. They earn slightly less in Melbourne at around 25, and again, even less in Canberra and in Adelaide and Canberra. So you need to make decisions about what you're going to compare. I'm going to let you do it. I'm going to give you a full 8 minutes to write this paragraph of about 5 to 6 sentences. Your time starts now. So I'm just, again, looking at the YouTube live chat. Make sure in this paragraph where you're comparing data that you actually write data. I want to see numbers. I want to see dollars. Okay. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can say that Sydney Uber drivers earned $27, for example. You can name the number from the y-axis, or you can do a little bit of mathematics, and you can say something like Melbourne Uber drivers earned approximately $3 less than Sydney Uber drivers. So you can do the 28 minus 25 to get the $3, for example. So two ways: choose it straight from the y-axis, or do a little bit of subtraction and find the difference. You can do that as well. That also works nicely. Give you another 2 or 3 minutes. All right, just let me have a quick look at this chat here. How's it looking, guys? Alpha, Joel. Okay, you should be writing in your PDFs, I hope, but let's have a look at these ones. Generally, Uber drivers in Australia make much more money per hour. Okay, fine. Compared to taxi drivers. Sydney is the city where an Uber driver will get the most money per hour at more than $25 per hour. So that second per hour is superfluous, it's unnecessary. However, in Canberra, both Uber and taxi drivers earn the least amount of money per hour at $23 for an Uber driver and about $17 for a taxi driver. Good, that's looking fine, Alpha, that's looking good. Well done. I'm just gonna read one more. Uber drivers in Perth and Sydney had the highest hourly earnings of about $27. Just a little tip here. I think the word approximately is a more sophisticated word than about. So approximately $27 would be better. Similarly, taxi drivers had the highest rate of pay at $25 in Perth, which was closely followed by taxi drivers in Sydney at nearly $22. The lowest hourly earnings were in Canberra for Uber and taxi drivers at close to $23 and $17 respectively. That's a really nice paragraph. Well done. That's looking good. I'll give you 1 more minute to finish this one, and then we'll have a look at how to edit it. All right, you should be done now. You should have written your summary sentence, the overall description of the main trends or key features, and then the third larger paragraph where you make comparisons. And we use this structure. Why? Because there was one graph that we're looking at. If we're looking at 2 or 3 graphs, we may have to use a different structure altogether. But cool, well done. So here's mine. I'm just going to read it for you from beginning to end. Hopefully you can hear how clear it is. So with the summary, this bar chart represents the hourly income earned in Australian capital cities for Uber drivers and taxi drivers. Main features. Overall, Uber drivers earn more than taxi drivers. The highest paid Uber drivers are in Sydney and Perth, while the lowest are in Canberra. Taxi drivers in Perth earn more than their taxi driving counterparts in all other cities, with Sydney coming second and Canberra taxi drivers having the lowest hourly earnings. Now I move into the comparison paragraph where I'll use data from the y-axis. Uber drivers earn more than taxi drivers in all cities, with the gap being least in Perth, where Uber drivers earn around $27 per hour compared to taxi drivers on $25. Gaps in all other cities are around $6 to $8 in favor of the Uber drivers. Hourly earnings in Melbourne and Adelaide are similar at around $25 for Uber and $18 for taxi drivers in both cities. The lowest earners overall are Canberra drivers for both Uber and taxis, where their rates are $23 and $17 respectively. That's 158 words. What do I do now? Well, I need to proofread this before I leave it and move on to my essay. So I'm going to spend actually 2 minutes proofreading, because you'll be surprised at the silly mistakes you can leave on your page if you're not paying attention. What are those silly mistakes? Well, ask yourself about grammar. Are there any mistakes that you regularly make? Do you have a problem with subject-verb agreement, like the S on the verb or the noun, for example? Or your verb tenses? Did you use simple past and present perfect? Did you use the correct tense at the right time? What about articles? An, and the? Make sure you go back and check those. Vocabulary. You don't need to use fancy vocabulary, but you need to use vocabulary accurately or precisely. You also need to avoid too much repetition. Sometimes a synonym will be useful. You also need to check your spelling. Are there any typos? Meaning. Do your sentences say what you want them to say? Check that the meaning is right. Punctuation. Spaces after full stops and commas. Capital letters. These are little things, but they're important. Most importantly, though, do check your writing to make sure it's over 150 words. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds now to count your words to make sure you've written more than 150 words. Just for your interest, I just counted to 150. I was imagining that I was counting my words there, and it took me 1 minute and 20 seconds to count my words. Should you do it on test day? Yeah, I think you need to. I think you need to count your words. I think the easiest way to do it is count it in blocks of 50. So you want 3 blocks of 50. So count from 1 to 50, mark on the page so you've done 1. Count to 50 again, that's 100. Count to 50 again, that's 150. Anything over that, leave it, that's fine. At least you've written more than 150. Just for my interest, put into the chat. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. So I'm just looking at the chat. Joel wrote 153 words. Fine, you've done well. Vashid wrote 143 words. So you would have, I don't know how many marks the IELTS take off you if you write under the word count, but I'm beginning to think that it's actually significant. It may be half a point, it might be 0.5 or even 1 whole band score if you're under 150 words. So be careful. It's just the other thing is, I think you get 1 sheet of paper for writing task 1, which is fine. You can write 150 words on that 1 sheet of paper, but for your essay, be super careful because you might finish both sides of the piece of paper, think that you've written more than 250 words and you haven't. So you have to raise your hand, wait for somebody to bring you a piece of paper. That's frustrating. Great. Anand wrote 159 words, so you're all safe there. But I think that's a good lesson for Vashid, who wrote 143 words. Okay. Here's a good one. Vashid's got a great question. Jay, if I write under the word count and I've written everything and it's all structured beautifully, what do I do? Can I write a summary sentence at the end? Yes. Okay, so let's say you've written your summary, your description, your comparison, and you've written 143 words, but you can't move anything around. So what are you going to do? What you're going to do is this. You're going to add an additional sentence at the end. It's not a conclusion. It's just an overall summary of the graph where you may say something like, in summary, comma, Uber drivers out-earn taxi drivers by approximately $5 in all capital cities. Full stop. You've written your 7 words. You've got to 150. It may not be great, but at least you've hit the word count, which is far more important. Cool. Be that a little tip for you. Okay, so why is this IELTS 9? What we're looking at here is what the IELTS examiners refer to when they're marking your writing. Okay, this is what they refer to when they're marking your writing. First one is called task achievement. And you can see here, this is IELTS 9. This is how you get an IELTS 9. You do 2 things. You fully satisfy the requirements of the task, and you clearly present a fully developed response. What that means is you've written the correct length, 150 words or more. You've answered the question fully. You've described the graph fully, in other words, and it's a fully developed response from beginning to end. That's why we have the summary, the description, and the comparison. Okay, next thing that the IELTS examiners look at is called coherence and cohesion. What this refers to is that you can create good paragraphs, and cohesion means logic, structure, the links between ideas, like then, next, while, in addition, before, after, in comparison, overall, X while Y, least, most, highest, lowest. This is cohesion. So you're also marked on that. You're also marked on what they call lexical resource, which in other words means vocabulary. And these are the words that I used in mine, like counterparts, the gap, in favor of, respectively, highest, lowest, the least, the most, higher than, lower than, more than, less than, compared to, around, and similar to. I think approximately is a better term there, but good vocabulary and a wide range of vocabulary. The last one you're graded on is grammar, and 2 things within grammar, actually. You're graded on range, which means you have a variety of grammar, and you're also graded on accuracy. So yes, the graph represents. If it's 2 graphs represent, for example, get your grammar right. Earned, past tense, versus earn. Coming, having, been, compared, are. The lowest earners overall are Canberra drivers for both Uber and taxis, where their rates are $23 and $17 respectively. They're referring to the 2 taxis and Uber. Drivers referring to more than one. There's a lot of grammatical information in here and it needs to be accurate. Let's just recap what we've learned in this lesson. So a structure for a single bar graph is what we just did, where we wrote a summary sentence, we then described the main features, then we compared the data in a larger paragraph. And this is what it turned out to be, 158 words. Cool, guys, if you're on YouTube, join the live classes. Just go to e2language.com. We've got masterclasses running until Friday because the big test is coming up on Saturday. So what's happening is 6 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, academic writing task 1. 7:30 p.m. This is Melbourne, Sydney time, by the way, so you might have to use Google. 7:30 p.m. What are we doing? We're doing IELTS writing task 2, problem solution, discussion, advantages, disadvantages, and opinion. And the other one, whatever that is. 9 p.m. we're doing general writing task 1 and or reading depending on the day. So still plenty of time to sign up and come and join these live classes. I think that's all. I'm going to leave it now because I'm doing writing task 2. By the way, if you want to stick around, I'm doing writing task 2 at 7:30 p.m. Melbourne time. I'll see you soon. Thanks for coming along. I appreciate it. How do I turn this thing off?